It is time for our very first Techie Talk of 2023 with State Representative Jackie Jan of Quincy. Happy New Year, Jackie.
Happy New Year, Joe, and everybody watching on QATV land.
It has been a very, although vacation week for a lot of folks, not on Beacon Hill. It's been extremely active up there, I know.
Yeah, no, it was not. My desire for binge watching during the holiday season was not going to happen. Moving into the final days of session, we talked a little about this before the holiday. There was a lot of bills to try to move through informal session on the last night of session, which is the January 3rd, the day before swearing in there, January 4th. And I was getting phone calls through the weekend about various pieces that people are trying to get done, and providing some feedback what's going on. So some stuff was actually pretty interesting we got through. For example, the catalytic converter bill that makes it a crime to steal catalytic converters and to require greater requirements regarding scrap metal dealers before they purchase catalytic converters from strangers, essentially, to determine whether or not it's hot goods, right? Those who aren't aware, it's actually not too difficult to steal a catalytic converter. You just go in there with a hacksaw, cut off the ears of the pipe, and then drop and run. It's been incredibly popular crime nationally. There's precious metals in there that can be resold, but the converter itself has a degree of value. And replacing catalytic converter can be upwards of several $1,000s, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 depending on the car. And insurance companies are challenged because it's theft. And law enforcement, insurance companies, and car manufacturers and others fully support this bill. And thankfully, it got passed into law on the last day of session, and the governor signed off on it. So there's an example of a important bill that made it through the line. Conversely, another bill that I'm very disappointed in didn't make it through the line was revenge porn, or to put it, people putting unauthorized sexual act tapes, those for personal use, onto the internet for the purpose of harming another. While I'll fully admit it's very difficult to catch these perpetrators, those who do catch should be punished, full extent of the law. And unfortunately, the House and Senate didn't get that done in the last night of session. So, we were able to move, a lot of bills in the last night. Unfortunately, some of these didn't make it over the line, and hope that House and Senate leadership, as we form the committee members and form the leadership teams, we'll move that bill, for example, to the top of the list of things we should get done early this year.
Can it kind of pick up where it left off, or does it have to start anew, Jackie?
Has to start anew through the committee process. Obviously, we could suspend rules and move things forward. We've done that before. For example, in the prior session, the global warming bill didn't quite get over because the governor vetoed it. Not the one we just did, the prior global warming bill, as we know, time is a little weird. We suspended both the House and Senate, and basically the membership agreed that, we already agreed to a version internally under both branches, and we're just going to suspend rules and ship the bill back up to the governor, which is what we did. And the governor sent back his vetoes, and we overrode the vetoes that January. So Speaker Mariano was elected at the end of 2020. So it was through January 2021. We suspended rules and moved forward in bills the House and Senate agreed upon in the prior session. Given the fact that we were operating emergency rules and the nature of COVID and just how screwed up the world was on trying to get anything done around here, it was a mess. It was the most prudent thing to do at the time, given how much uncertainty there was. And the decision making was contingent on what was going to happen in the real world around us regarding COVID, right? It's not necessarily what happens inside the State House. It's everything around the State House that you all of us live in, is what drives a lot of decision making. So, in 2021, we just kind of expedited everything in the first 2 months because we didn't have a proper session to do everything. I suspect it'll be a more normalized session where we come back to pre-COVID behavior in terms of operations. We'll see what happens in the end. Rules debate will be coming up at some point in the next 3 or so weeks. We're hoping that the speaker makes his decisions, and leadership team and chairmanship and vice chairmanship appointments and committee appointments to be presented to the Democratic caucus for our approval, hopefully sometime in the next 4 weeks. But again, the speaker operates on his own timeline before presenting to the Democratic caucus his recommendations. But I mean, we're going to have in-person session with in-person swearing in. But I'm hoping, we'll be asking for situations regarding severe medical problems. And if you're bringing a disease to the building, don't come here. And create some mechanisms in there to ensure that we're not spreading diseases among ourselves. The chamber is very cramped. If you watched any of the governor's swearing in ceremony, it gives you kind of a clue. It's not exactly that cramped on a regular formal session, but it gives you a bit of a clue about how quickly and how tight space the House chamber really is.
Yeah. Did you attend the lone walk ceremony for Charlie Baker?
I did not. Sadly, you do this enough times long enough, you don't need to see it again. It's very uncommon. It's 4 8 years, generally 8 years, because of the nature of governorships these days. And I encourage my staff to go watch it. But I've seen Bill Bell, Paul Salucci, which had an unusual one because the grand staircase wasn't open. Jane Swift, and Mitt Romney. So I've seen a few of these, but it is a unique opportunity for people near the state. I also want to come to the state house to watch them walk, even though it's not like it takes long. And ironically, the governor was still signing bills up to swearing in day on the new legislative session on Wednesday. So because the bills are tied to the governor of the session it was passed in. So when Maura Healey got sworn in as governor, she cannot sign bills from the prior session. And everything the governor doesn't sign gets pocket vetoed, as many people remember from school. The concept of pocket vetoes at the end of a legislative cycle, the governor doesn't sign it, it doesn't become law in 10 days, that's pocket vetoed. So the governor pocket
basically he puts it in his pocket and forgets about it.
Essentially, yeah. I don't have to acknowledge it; it just dies on its own. So there were 2 bills that got a pocket veto. One relative to a technical correction regarding judicial contiguous service. Basically, if you have a break in service as a judge, you should be able to combine contiguous the breaks in service like any other public employee. So you have contiguous service for retirement calculation. It's really a technical correction to put them in line with literally everybody else that allows you to use prior service. And there's a break between employment and you come back to government employment. You can merge the time together because you already vested prior. So I know that didn't sound very clear, but short answer is that I worked 20 years in government. I leave government for 5. I come back to government, work another 10 more. That should be 30 years. The judicial system doesn't allow to do that regarding judges break in service. So that was a technical correction that the governor pocket vetoed, and it's actually my bill. So that's I'm fully aware of that. I've been pocket vetoed. And then there's I can't remember the other one. It's another home rule petition. I think that the governor had problems with, which I can't remember off the top of my head. So, but Governor Baker was busy right up to the very end.
So has Governor Healey got her whole cabinet put together now?
She got some of it put together. You've seen it in newspapers, and she's Health and Human Services is the one that's vacant at the moment. That's the one getting the most attention in the press. But there's economic development, this administration and finance. She created a new cabinet regarding this climate change coordination among government, energy, environment secretary. But there's more along the way. She's still filling out her inner staff in the governor's office while trying to fill the secretariats at the same time. Then she has to fill the undersecretaries, the commissioners, the deputy commissioners, and so forth. So she's got hundreds of appointments she still needs to make and put in government work. And not to say that people are doing poorly. I mean, people do get compensated. But relative to the private sector, and especially now the wage market that we're in now, it's getting more and more challenging for any governor. It doesn't matter what political party, but to hire people out of private sector, they take, maybe up to 60% pay cut, depending, if you were CEO of a company or CEO or CFO, to come work in government where you're getting paid, 160, 180, 190, where you were making closer to like $400,000, $500,000 in private sector. Because Health and Human Services, runs almost 50% of government services. If you include Medicare, Medicaid, Mass Health. So you're looking at a person that's running $15 billion agency, right? This was a private sector job. You're getting compensated in mundo dollars to run a $15 billion company. Here, I don't remember exactly how it is, but you're not making mundo dollars. relative to the size of the agencies you got to oversee. And the governor will do some reorganization. We're fully aware that economic development and housing is going to get broken up to economic development, and housing will be a separate secretary. So we know that's coming. The governor needs to file a bill to do reorganization. But once she has her plan in place, we'll see the bill. And the legislature historically is not inclined to object to the governor's reorganization, generally speaking. Not like we haven't objected, but generally we don't. So, give it more time. The state governor stated a state address that will come along at some point. She pretty much gave the state address during her inaugural, which actually took me a little bit by surprise. Inaugurals generally don't lay out your entire policy agenda. You kind of touch on a few things and talk about the importance of governing and hope to get things done together as opposed to laying out a bunch of details. Generally, we expect that as state, but it's her inaugural, it's and we still got all the unpaid boards and commissions. I mean, there's 1,000 some odd rotating. I'm not saying they're all going to be happening at once, but rotating boards and commissions as vacancies appear. She's going to have to put folks in, and these are not paid jobs. So you gotta get volunteers out there to make the one be appointed to these boards and commissions.
Yeah, plus, I mean, she was Attorney General, so now we have an acting Attorney General, right?
Yeah, it's a gap in time problem. She became a governor, so she has to resign as Attorney General, and she became governor. So you have an acting Attorney General until the Attorney General is sworn in on the 18th, so next Wednesday, and as well as Secretary of State, the state auditor, and the state treasurer. So, but since she went from one constitutional office to another, and there's no direct handoff between the two in timing, this is what happened. Same thing actually happened to district attorney. People forgot this too. When Bill Keating became a congressman, there was a gap in time between the swearing in and the swearing of the district attorney, because Congress gets sworn in sooner than the district attorney by 2 days, I think. Right. So Keating had to resign. They appointed Michael Morrissey as the district attorney. The governor appointed the district attorney for 2 days until he was sworn in as district attorney.
Interesting. Yeah, I did forget about that, but that's right. I remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah. Was it 2 days or 10 days? Whatever. There was a gap. So, in the AG's case, we have an appointed temporary AG by the Attorney General. The Constitution allows the legislature to appoint a new Attorney General, but it's kind of silly. Between the 4th of January and the 18th of January, there's no point to the legislature appointing an Attorney General. However, we'll be appointing a new governor's counselor. Governor's counselor Juberville has become a clerk magistrate. I think.
Right.
And it's the start of a new term. Mm-hmm. And my understanding, to fill the vacancy requires a joint session of the House and Senate and the Constitutional Convention for the purposes of electing a governor's counselor.
Okay, that's right. He lives right over in Milton, actually. That's right.
Yeah, in Quincy, our governor's counselor is Ianella. So I have, none of us actually have a direct stake in this. I'm sure there's some degree of jockeying for folks to get their political ducks in a row, for lack of a better term, to get someone nominated. There is no timeline for us to do this. We can get this done when we want to get it done, is my understanding, but I could be wrong on that front. It's not like a buzz conversation in Beacon Hill right now. The inaugural is getting our bills filed. Speculation and rumors abound about committee assignments and appointments to government and all that stuff is dominating the conversation among my colleagues. At some point, we'll get around to who will be the next governor's counselor for 2 years.
Do you want to keep your committee assignment, Tacky?
I would like to. I still have some things to do. I mean, obviously, alcohol continues to be a big part of my life in terms of public policy, and we did some, good things last cycle, and the restaurant industry regarding things like takeout alcohol and outdoor dining, board building regs associated outdoor dining, something that I've been monitoring for quite some time, and I have some thoughts in the matter, and we'll continue to monitor how that's moving along. Obviously I'm working a lot of licensing issues. As you all discovered, it's a very technical issue. A lot of these licensing are updates to current law, not really reforming licensing. It's a reflection of the modern era of old terms and updated education requirements. Still watching things like the state lottery, the racetrack, and try to do some racing reform. which was supposed to be done in 2020, if not for COVID, backbenching this entire issue and modernization of the law that's frankly from 1932. So it badly needed an update regardless. So, not exactly exciting bills in the sense that it's not going to change the world right away, but, very technical stuff that I deal with and very detailed issues it's trying to navigate. So, I enjoy my committee assignment as you've all discovered over the last couple of years now. And it's a lot of work. It's very technical and eats up a lot of time, but, I do enjoy that. However, that being said, I still don't know what the speaker's recommendations are. And at some point, we'll find out and then respond accordingly.
We talk about a bill that is going to be just controversial again, has been ongoing, is called Medical Aid in Dying. Proponents object to the term assisted suicide. Opponents call it exactly that. But there is going to be a bill debated soon about that, right?
Well, again, how we describe things in public policy shapes how people think about things, right? And I always point to things like the words right to repair. Sounds great until you actually really think about what it really is. It's allowing mechanics to access your private data into your car, telemetrics that can find out anything you want about you. But it's called right to repair because people like the idea they can, repair your car any way you want, but not get into those little details. We talked about this before, in the 2020 election cycle, which the voters voted on and sitting before the federal court. The ability for people to choose whether or not to continue their own life and to have someone assist them to do that, because that's what it is. And you have to have someone sign off medically that you have no other options and to provide you the necessary drugs to be administered by someone else or basically by someone else to allow you to die. That's the definition. So in summary, that's the definition. I know there's details regarding 2 doctors and medical fitness in terms of mental health and all this other details involved. But anyone in a participation, even a person that has to determine your mental health, is participating in decision making regarding not, you're able to ask someone else to participate in ending your life. So now that being defined, let's the public decide. How would you like to define that? And based on the definitional term as opposed to how you want to mark it. And this is the interesting about my work of policymaking is the fact people like to tag terms. As opposed, let's give you the definition and let you think about what the term should be. But that is essentially what, in summary, that's a very basic, because I know there's a lot more details than that in the bill, but that's a very summarized portion. It's been filed up here for about 16 years or so, 8 terms, I think maybe even more. I remember this issue from back in my Morrissey days. So it's not new. And the voters did vote against this, I believe, 8 years ago, maybe, by about 51% of the vote. Very, very controversial in the public view. But we're also a free petition state. Literally anyone can file anything, which is why we have well into almost 5,500, 6,000 bills a cycle. So the legislative session is very busy with sheer volume of bills. I suspect there's going to be a lively debate among people for and against the issue. I continue to listen to both sides of the issue. The details of these bills keep changing ever so slightly every cycle. Like I said, I gave you the big picture summary. There are a lot of details associated with it, and it's not easy because it's not necessarily just individual seeking to end the individual's life, but I mean, it's a participation from other folks, whether the person doing the mental evaluation to the individual determining there are no other solutions, to the person that's actually going to provide the assistance to move end of life gracefully. It's not just one person, and of course, there's the impact of family members, and also the impact of society as a whole regarding how we value or unvalue, depending on what side of the argument you're on. I mean, yes or no, where we are as a society regarding this issue. And the divided vote of this losing, but a very closely divided vote, reflects that the society is unclear as a whole which direction makes the most sense. So again, I always listen to the arguments for both sides of the matter. And people under the myth there's only one side of the argument. That is not true. There's two sides of the argument, and both have sent very impassioned statements to my office regarding for and against, and I suspect it will continue again this year.
Yeah, one question I had about it was, how does it impact life insurance policies? Could there be clauses written into some of these that would negate a payout because of that?
Yeah, again, another detail that I'm not sure how it would work either. The only tragic case I can think of regarding insurance payout was the Brian Joyce situation, where he attempted to make it look like an accident versus suicide. And obviously, he was trying to think about, providing for his family in, quite frankly, a strongly tragic way. Obviously, we knew there was a cloud of a criminal investigation around him at the time. But at the same time, I mean, there was a full investigation. Insurance companies, want to ensure that the payout meets the policy, and try to defraud the insurance company was something, obviously insurance companies try to avoid being defrauded. I mean, they don't want to be fraud on insurance claims. So, I mean, there's those questions. There's also medical insurance questions, who's going to be compensating. I deal with state issues, things like, last minute wills. If there's a substantial amount of estate, was there these last minute decisions made? Who's participating? If a person's participating in the act of assisted end of life compensation, right? What state of mind's going into the end. And I know there's a grace period and changing your mind too, but I mean, a lot of other decisions can occur during the grace period. There's a lot of questions that you just brought up on a simple thing like insurance and who pays for it, but also all these other details associated. And people can argue, other states like Oregon's figured it out. Sure, but every state is different in how they operate the insurance industry, the healthcare industry, and the probate courts. It's not uniform. Just because one state does it doesn't mean we do it too.
Yeah, it's as it's very, very clear, there's going to be a lot of discussion, and we'll see what happens in this session.
Agreed. People under the mistaken belief that when you can do it in one place in one state, you can do it identically in another. It isn't that simple. I'll give you another very simple one. For example, it's buying cigarettes is different in each state regarding their age. Marriage age is different in every state to allow teenagers to marry. So just because it happens in one state doesn't mean it happens to another. And those are just two relatively simple laws. But it expands to a whole litany of issues. I do licensing. Obviously, reciprocal licensing is a big issue. Every state has different rules and regs regarding how to do licensing. Very complicated, very, very complicated issue. COVID made it even more complicated. So, I mean, people like to point to other states, to policymakers all the time. It's like a regular occurrence over here. And they're like, oh, we do it here. She should do it here. I'm like, yeah, but we're not them. We're us. And we do things differently. And here's how it works. And here's why. And, there's a lot of that. I mean, and also my other favorite one up here is, you have to be first in the nation. I'm like, no, we don't. I mean, there's nothing wrong to see how other things unfold before we try. Right.
Learn from others' mistakes, right?
Yeah, sometimes first isn't good. I don't know why. It's a very psychological thing, right? I mean, being first means you're a winner. Yeah, and certain things, obviously, first in the political election, being first is kind of important, right? But it's not always the case in every instance. Life isn't an election or a foot race.
Let's talk about something that might be a little more easy to resolve is the MCAS test and the requirement to pass that in order to graduate high school.
Yeah, as people may be aware, I'm very skeptical of the MCAS as a whole. It works against people who speak English as a second language in particular, and not all schools are created equal, and it's been used as a weighted system to try to influence people to move to certain communities. And it can be a weighted system to try to, people grade, your school, not really looking what's inside your school and the challenges associated with the school. And there's inequities in the school regarding things like resource allocation, right? Quincy is actually a very high allocation resource to schools between the city budget as well as the state assistance. But other poorer communities don't have the size of the property taxes. And, we provide a lot of state assistance for poorer communities. However, there's only so much that can be provided to those communities. And of course, people will, move jobs based for better pay as we move along. So we do not have a true uniform system, let's say in the country, in Europe, like France, for example, where the federal government creates a uniform system of resource allocation to all schools in the country, including nutritional standards. But at the same time, special education is not treated the same everywhere in the world. And we're a country that, we're a country, we're a state. I can't say every state's behaves here, but we're a state that works our best to try to ensure equal access to education to all children. We try really hard. And we can still do better as we go along, don't get me wrong. But we also put a lot of resources into access to education.
Mhm.
And anybody who has to, work with children know that not every kid's the same, and that's a major challenge. So my attitude's always been, if you can read, you can do math, and you can read competently, you can learn anything you need to learn in life.
It's
It's
interesting.
yeah, I can't figure out how to do math anymore, put it that way.
Well, it's different from when we went to school, Jackie. They teach it all different now.
Well, I memorize multiplication tables in third grade. Now they're memorizing multiplication tables at a younger age.
Yeah.
There is a cognitive issue. While memory, is a little easier, I guess, when you're younger. But there's a cognitive point as well. 3 times 3 is 9, but is a visualization of how you got to 9 too. But I'm a visual learner in the sense that if I can see it, I can get a better sense of what's happening than just reading it. But that's just my how I desire to learn. That works for me. But everybody's different, and the MCAS has become a lot of more things, which I don't know the logic behind some of it. I do think that a diversity of education is important. I do think that people should have a broad educational component. And I do think that, the schools can provide, how do I put this, a global picture, a bigger picture of the world that we live around us. And, a lot of the stuff regarding, concentration issues can be done in university and college. Like if you want to be, a class just on the Civil War for a semester, for example, that's a college grade course. Should you learn Civil War in high school? Yes. Are you going to learn at the level as you do in college? The answer is no. But obviously, at the same time, we're also pushing things up here at Beacon Hill for new legislative mandates in education. So, for example, we were talking about ethnic education here to talk about the contributions of other people of color as part of education system. Very involved, lots of moving parts, not as simple as it sounds. Because it's reflection of a contribution of all people that live in the United States, not just some. And it's not about teaching people of foreign countries. It's teaching about people that live here and the contributions here. And the logic is to provide great education to people who are immigrants or people who lived here for 5 generations. A bigger view about the formation of the United States in history.
Yeah. Mar Healy suggested free community college for everybody 25 years and older. What do you think?
Not new, been proposed before. Sounds like the Bob Patrick idea back in the day. Great. I don't know what to say. It's like, good. Every governor, Democratic candidate suggested this, and the legislature's never funded it. So there. I hate to put it that simply.
Yeah, I think she put a price tag of 50 million on it, something like that.
I don't think that's enough money. It's never enough because it's not just saying the price of education today, it's the price of education tomorrow. And we'll go back to K through 12, chapter 70. No, the mechanisms designed to keep increasing the amount of money we give to cities and towns for a decade. We're like year 3 in the 10-year cycle. Is it 10 or 7? I think it's 7-year cycle to increase contributions. But I mean, we increase, so-called free community college education. I mean, we still have to pay in the long run, not in the short term. Honestly, personally speaking, I mean, if we somehow reduce fees at schools, I think it'll go a long way to help student populations, not necessarily just at a tuition level, because the school will find a way to fee you. And those of us, whether it be going to private or public schools, knows exactly. Doesn't matter what decade you went to school in. Trust me, the fee thing showed up in your eyes like, where did this thing come from, right? It doesn't matter what decade. Trust me, all of us have felt this when we went to university or college. So, I mean, even the UMass system, I'm surprised that the governor's office didn't look at the fee structure and goes, what is this really about?
Good point. It's a state-funded school, sure.
That was exactly it. So it isn't like a volunteer situation at home where, PTOs and other neighborhood organizations are raising some money for athletics or school trips or whatever, that they feel that the school needs extra assistance from the generosity of the public. This is fees in particular in education are like mandated. You don't pay your fees, you don't go to school.
That's right. Yep.
It's like, so that's not tuition. So it's amazing.
It's just, like you say, it's about marketing. It's how you call it.
Well, again, this is kind of like, we'll see how the governor's people, create the public policy. As I think some have noticed, I tend to be a little more like, on the ground level, and I do pay some attention to what people tell me. Let's look at, like, I don't know, go get someone's bill and look at it and see what the problem is, as opposed to just saying, hey, let's give people free education. Well, let's back up a second. What are the other barriers of entry besides just tuition, right? Transportation costs, right? Eating. I mean, ramen noodles. Does people not remember Pop-Tarts and ramen? I ate a lot of Pop-Tarts. I probably shouldn't have, but I mean, Pop-Tarts and ramen noodles. And of course, it's competitive education. I remember eating stale hamburgers for like, $2.50. Nowadays, some private schools have sushi chefs, which I still boggle my mind, frankly. I'm like, where did I went to school in the wrong decade, clearly. That's no joke. It was like stale, barely warm hamburgers at Houston Center at Brandeis. I'm like, oh my God, I got to eat something. Not the most healthy diet. I was a commuter, so we chomped and moved between jobs and schooling. So between classes I worked and then had to dash out to another job, and it became not a very healthy lifestyle. Like, I don't think my lifestyle is improving in terms of that kind of issue currently either. In some ways, I'm still like living in college trying to get between jobs and making the schedule for session and hearings. But yeah, I mean, I'm more grounded mentality about things like that. I mean, like, okay, fine, pull out someone's bill. Let's look at a real life situation. Let's factor in some other things that everyone has to deal with when they go to education, whether they're a commuter, living on campus, part-time, full-time.
We will see where that one goes as well. It's safe to say, though, that a Democrat in the corner office does not guarantee passage of all proposed bills by the legislature.
Oh, absolutely not. Deval Patrick hated us at one point because he had some perception, which is rubber stamp whatever the governor wanted. And as time went along, the tension between the legislators and the governor became more of an internal issue, because each legislator has a different priority, and the House and Senate leadership has to manage our different priorities. And this not just includes the Democratic caucus, but also involves the Republican caucus priorities. It's not like we ignore our Republican colleagues. We do pay attention to catalytic converter theft issue, as I talked about earlier, was an initiative by my good friend Steve Howard, a Republican from Seekonk, who's also a car aficionado, who knows all about these things that I have no idea about. And that was one of his initiatives. He kept calling me about it, like, I need some help with the speaker to push this out. I'm like, okay, well, I'll see what I can do to help you out, Steve, right? This is what, good working relationships all about. But I mean, as time goes along, the challenge between not just the governor, but the governor's secretariats and their undersecretariats and their commissioners and so forth, can choose. They don't have to do anything. They can choose to engage the legislature, the various chairs, vice chairs, committee members, and just individual folks on both political parties to discuss, important things that affect our districts, and as well as try to move public policy issues forward. So, we're inside a bit of a honeymoon period. It's a grace period, but eventually that will end, and we'll see how we're treated by the executive branch, and the legislature tends to respond based on how we're treated.
Okay. Well, we'll lay the groundwork and we'll watch it unfold. Hey, speaking of House leadership, I was thinking of you, Tacky, during the House leadership fiasco in Washington, D.C.
Oh yeah, we can't avoid not talking about that clown show.
Exactly.
I mean, let's call it what it is. Yeah, which part we want to talk about?
Were you surprised at the concessions that were made in order to resolve that?
No, not at all. I mean, this is going back to the Balmer Ryan era of speakership in the Republican caucus. This is basically a variation of that same scenario where they created mechanisms to basically shoot themselves in the head in the caucus, the leadership, and they're back to where they were before. Interestingly enough, Nancy Pelosi, while also having a 4 or 5 person margin to achieve 218 votes in the House, was able to push through, for example, through her own caucus, the ability to not have one person unseat the speaker or unseat the leader of the caucus, despite the fact that she also had I won't say sizable, but big enough group that can derail her votes. Right. And here's a huge reflection. While not all Democrats are the same and not all Republicans are the same, and there's a huge spectrum of diversity in both political parties. People tend to lump us into binary one or the other. It's not. It's a spectrum of different folks with different districts, different ideas, different upbringings, different Democrats, different Republicans, and so forth. That, Nancy Pelosi was able to, for 4 years, despite this small group of, 4 to 10-ish people that, far left end, and a few people that just didn't like her. They weren't liberals. They just didn't like her.
Right.
She was able to, work with these folks to keep herself speakership, get her leadership team in place, made proper concessions that didn't derail the House functionalities, nor create special committees that certain people want, nor had to give up a whole bunch of choice assignments and maintain the seniority structure in the Democratic caucus. Now, some of you are like, it's Democrats. I'm like, no, they had a bunch of infighting. People can look at it in the papers about the infighting what's going on and try to navigate that. Now we have the complete opposite contrast with McCarthy here, and a similar situation for a vote margin. He didn't get the so-called red wave where he could have had 30 Republican votes, and he could marginalize the people who just hate his guts, as well as certain segments of the political wing from being able to leverage their position against speakership. So it actually is an interesting quandary when you think about it, where you have clear majority of your caucus, but you don't have the majority vote in the House of Representatives, which is what you need to win the speakership. The majority of the House, not just the majority of the caucus. And create a fascinating observation from the outside looking in regarding how do you get to that number, and to talk about voting present versus voting with them. Do Democrats get involved? Which, by the way, why would you get involved in something you get zero benefit from? I mean, people kept talking about that. Well, Democrats should kick in. I'm like, why? They get no chairmanships. They're not going to be able to push their agenda. They're still going to be treated like crap because they're a minority party. And it's it's divisive over there. It's personal. It's not like here in the State House where, we like you, don't like you because of the person you are, not because of your political spectrum. We just don't like it because you're you, not because your political ideology.
Right.
That's how I look at things.
Even McCarthy understood that, so he didn't even cross that line.
Exactly it. And you have that guy Santos in New York State with this cloud above him that no one wants to touch in the Republican caucus because they still have to figure out how to handle it, given the small margin they have to maintain 218 votes. So the concessions were quite amazing because he just created new mechanisms to depower himself.
That's right.
And the rules debate went off fairly smoothly, all things considered, because there's a reflection of some concessions that he made, but not all concessions. Some of these concessions were handshake deals, which would be hashed out in the Republican caucus, particularly committee assignments. So I discussed earlier how the speaker makes a recommendation. The Democratic caucus approves or rejects the recommendation of the speaker. The same thing happens in the Republican caucus here. Same thing happens in Congress. Republican Democratic caucuses will recommend appointments, and they will be approved or disapproved by the membership. And if I'm a loyal McCarthy person for many years and, whipping votes for him and all that, and you got this little group of folks that literally just do nothing to help you, just make your life miserable, and they're going to get heavily rewarded, not just rewarded, but heavily rewarded. I mean, I'll be like, hey, dude, been with you, been loyal, getting this. Well, we needed these guys. Seriously? I mean, I could see that, like, that's a real life. Like, all of us should be thinking that, right? This is not a political thing. This is called like common sense, right? Everybody listening to me would be like, oh yeah, why wouldn't you? Right? So there's a lot of like these internal caucus things that we're probably going to get some leaks that, the papers and the news media will catch, and it will maybe glean some insight what's really going on in that caucus.
Yeah.
But, he got past the first tough hurdle. Obviously, the speakership made mass concessions that had really hurt him on pushing even the Republican agenda.
Yeah.
And then he managed to survive rules debate, create this like committee to investigate the DOJ or whatever you want to call it, bias against conservatism. We're like, okay, I mean, whatever. And they want to do like a Chinese investigation security thing. Like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
They're just committees. They've passed a resolution to defund the IRS essentially. Or reduce the budget by $80 billion.
Yes.
And those of you who are still waiting for your refunds or your audit or anything that's pending over there, which I've heard complaints about by my friends, particularly in the business sector, small businesses, the Republican caucus in DC just basically want to make your life harder by basically getting rid of the agency's employees that we're waiting for a response from. The dismantling of government because obviously the Democratic Senate and the president's Democratic are not going to push those agendas forward. So now you have a situation where you have one branch that is severely compromised, not necessarily because the Republicans control the House, but because the Republican caucus in itself is compromised on how they run their caucus. And hopefully, or maybe, I have no idea, maybe he doesn't survive 6 months. A member will object to his speakership or leadership of the caucus, and they have to start over again.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. It's pretty fascinating. We're going to see a huge contrast, agree or disagree of the policy matters, the operation of the caucus, the operation of the House is more than just putting down bills and laws. It's what it sounds like. It's how you operate the branch. So I think it'll be, if you're a political watcher or you like to learn about procedures and lessons down in Congress, this is going to be a great observation.
For sure, yeah. Before we talk again, Jackie, it will be Martin Luther King Jr. Day coming up already upon us. Any district events or activities that you know of?
Not to my knowledge. We haven't really done anything since COVID.
Yeah.
And then, Quincy Human Rights Commission had in the past had events, and then the Human Rights Commission, for whatever reason, was able to not continue those. I remember because I got actually the Martin Luther King Community Service Award from the Human Rights Commission many, many moons ago. I think it was like 2009. I remember I had to dig our car out. It was like the smallest attendance ever at North Quincy High School. I mean, it was a snowed in situation. And,
yes.
And I remember getting a note from Rosemary Wahlberg about how easy it was to select me at the time, as well as how proud she was for me to be a recipient.
I was actually a past recipient as well. In 2002.
All right, so you got a head start on me. But no, it's nice to be recognized, but it's not the end of the world, as you know as well. But I'm Germantown Neighborhood Association, Germantown Neighborhood Center. Had took over the event for a few years under Catholic quickly, and then they were unable to keep it up because it's a lot of work to put together an event and then, do some recognitions and all, get the kids out and all that on a holiday. And then you have the city taking it over for a little bit. And then, I've not heard anything. BC High has an event going on in the morning, and I don't have an interest to go, to be honest. But I mean, I generally attend something that's local. To my knowledge, there's nothing going on. Maybe there will be at some point, but I have no idea what it is. And it's somewhat unfortunate that hasn't happened, especially given the incidents we've had regarding some racial issues last year, as well as some hate crimes and violence against people of color, as well as the graffiti incident at Quincy High School with Principal Ford. And I'm fairly confident those are not isolated incidents. I've heard stories. Forget I do hear things. And there tend to be eyewitness. I hear things. But again, I don't run the city. I just live here like the rest of you. I mean, it's a reflection of our community regarding the city's leadership regarding certain matters. And as I go through every 2 years, representing people in Beacon Hill the best I can, and try to do constituent services and other things for folks at home. It's reflection of state government at home, and how you vote in ballot questions also reflects state government on Beacon Hill too. So those ballot questions are important when people vote on them. Same thing on city government level, how they handle things, as well as how they value different holidays and events. It's a reflection of not just their city government, but also the people living in Quincy. So, like you all, I just kind of live here.
How can folks get a hold of you, Tacky?
Well, I'm still in the same office for now until the Speaker of the Democratic Caucus says otherwise. So we're still at 617-722-2370, 617-722-2370. That's the phone number. I have staff in office. We are trying to set up ourselves right now regarding the upcoming session. tacky.chan@mahouse.gov, tacky.chan@mahouse.gov is my telephone number. So we have, my email. My email is actually fairly tame right now, which I'm happy by. Won't be happy probably in 3 weeks when it goes out of control. Obviously, State Representative Tacky Chan Facebook. You can follow me there, as well as @Tacky Chan on Twitter. Please do not social media me, just call or email me, much easier. And TackyChat.org, as well as malegislature.gov, or our websites, and of course QATV. You can see my archives and some of the, God knows what I've been saying in the past. So if you care to beat me up, there's plenty of material for you to do so. And of course, always enjoy my time with Joe and Mark, whenever we're able to get together.
As do we, Tacky. We look forward to having you here in the studio again soon this year.
Well, I've gotten comfortable, as you can see, a little more passion. So as we joked about last time, dressing up for the QATV. But also just want to remind folks, the special election coming up. I'm sure you guys are reminding folks as well, on the Ward 4 special election next Tuesday, the 17th, and the final election coming up on the 7th of February. So those who live in Ward 4, I'll just remind folks that you have a municipal ward council special election, and please get out and vote. Like we always say, it's important that everyone's voice be heard, and how you vote is a reflection of the community you live in.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, Tacky. Have a wonderful week. We'll check in again next week.
Yeah, you take care of it. I'll see you in a week's time.